I have dad issues. Yeah, I have dad issues. Matter of fact, me and all my siblings have dad issues. Why? Because though our father was, it's probably one of the reasons why I talk about him so much. Though he was a hero and an amazing person. He was a terror to his children. And that's partly because he was chasing his own demons, in terms of chasing the demons of his father being that way. He was always fighting a fight of being something that he already was. He was always talking about becoming or being, or but he didn't realize that he already was, and people loved him for who he already was. And so thus I have daddy issues. I have dad issues. I remember my niece got upset with us, and she was like, "Cause they got dad issues." Yeah, we do. We do. Love-hate relationship, you know. Great guy, great person. But was because he was fighting his own devils and demons, he kind of messed over us, not in a way on purpose, but trying to be a great father, trying to be that guy, trying to be that person, trying to be that help, trying to be that spiritual aid, trying to be all things to all men. We got lost somewhere in the shuffle. And wanting your people to be greater than is imaginable, where you never find happiness in who they are, you never find contentment in what they do. It can always be better. So once you reach a certain spot, it's never good enough. It can always be greater. And it's already bad enough that as human beings, we do that to ourselves. But then to have people who we love the most do it to us, and once we achieve, it's not even appreciated. What they said that we need to achieve, and it's not appreciated because there's always better. It's always, every time you get to a place, you can't celebrate because you always got to do better. And I remember the day I decided I hated my dad. I do. Now you have to know, when my father passed away in July 2019, he and I were thick as thieves and closer than close, but he was still a mean, shut your mouth. I mean, good God. I mean, let me go back before I tell you the day I decided I hated my dad. I knew I hated him. Such a terror of a person. Wonderful guy. Man of God. Bashi. Bishop. Andiodo Kosa. But we had to move our building, and I'll talk about that another time. We had to move buildings, and so that was I was the Lone Ranger. I was the one left to carry this part of his mantle. And so before he passed away, and he was on his deathbed literally, and I went to tell him, Dad, he couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, couldn't raise his head, nothing. They were out the room, and I said, Dad, we just want you to know that your legacy is secure, and to sign the paper so we can move. This man grunted at me and turned his back on me. Now I'm ensuring his legacy. I'm ensuring what he built and was able to take apart, and spent the last half of his life trying to put back together after he took it apart, and left me with basically broken people and debt. And I'm trying to carry it on, and you get mad at me because I'm choosing what I believe to do what's best based upon what I have left, of the nothing that's left. And you grunt and turn your back on me. So I got so mad. I said, well, if you wake up dead tomorrow, don't be mad at me. You know? Then I kissed him on his forehead, and I told him when I come back, if he's not here, I'll see him in the morning. Because I didn't know every time when I left and came back, if he would, still be with us on this side before Jesus received him. So even on his deathbed was just mean and wanted his way so bad that he was in the hospital. If they didn't call him Bishop, he wouldn't respond. He'd act like he would sleep all the time. But nevertheless, I remember when I decided I hated my dad, he had been married, I think, like a month or so. He got married again to his former wife in 1990, and he had been married for like a month or so, I believe. I was in 5th grade, and he he decided he was gonna. He took us, he and his wife and her 2 daughters. We went to go get bikes, and so they bought us bikes, and we picked out bikes. I remember my bike was it was a mountain bike, and it was my first big person bike. It was yellow and black, and I thought it was dope. And so I got my little bike, and we pumped him up, and we took him to his house, and we rode him for a minute, and then he was taking us back home, and because he had to be at the citywide revival, because my pop, and to me one of the greatest preacher ever walked the face of the earth, Dr. Melvin V. Wade, former pastor of Mount Moriah Church of Los Angeles, California. Dr. Melvin Vaughn Wade Sr. was the revivalist for the Sacramento Baptist Ministers Conference citywide revival, and my dad was the president then, and he had done a great job, blew it all the way up, and I mean the citywide revival was just amazing at that time. And so they pick us up and take us to go buy bikes at Toys R Us. We get the bikes, we take him back to his house, we ride him for a little bit. Then he has to get us back home so we can get home and shower and get to church. And I'm a preacher, always been a preacher, and but I was 11 then, and I wanted to go to church with him. So he drops us off back at home. And by the time he gets home, I call him, and I call to his house, and his wife answers the phone. And I said, "Hi, can I speak to Daddy?" And she said, "Okay." And he gets the phone, and he yells at me. And he says, "Hang up the phone and call back right." And I was perplexed. And I said, "Oh, okay." So I hung the phone up, and I called back. And I said, she said, "Hello." I said, "Hi, may I speak to Daddy?" She said, "Didn't you just call?" I said, "Yeah." He hung up on me, told me to call back right. And then he gets the phone, and he starts going for blood on me. I mean, going for blood. Like, I mean, just, I'm ungrateful and everything they've done for me. And I'm trying to figure out what just happened. I'm literally trying to figure out, what did I do? What just happened in this moment? And he's going for blood. I mean, I'm from the hood. I'm ghetto, and it's that Cooper in me. Because whenever he was mad, he'd always say it's the Cooper. Couldn't be the Griffin, had to be the Cooper. Oh, I mean, just going bad. I mean, now this is my hero. I mean, he's going bad. The person I want to be, the only person in the world I ever wanted to be like, and I ended up like him. And I'm 11, and he's going for blood on my head, and I'm trying to figure out what I just did. And then he says, after about 10 minutes of going off on me, "That's my wife, that's your mom now." I'm like, nigga, what? Yo, bro, my mom is right here in the other room. That's your wife, it's not my mom. Now, and if you wanted me to say that, then nigga, why did you just say that? Nah, I was 11. I didn't say this then. I'm like, nigga, why? Bruh, blood. Why did you just say that's what you want me to say, instead of like going off on me, and then at the end of going off on me, and then he hung up, call back right. And so I'm crying, and I still want to go to church. So I was a sucker just for punishment. I just wanted to go to church because I wanted to hear Melvin Wade preach, and I wanted to be around a person who just cussed me out. Regardless, no matter how bad, abusive, right? No matter how bad he cussed me out, I wanted to be around the person who just cussed me out, because that's my dad. I want to be in the atmosphere of what he's in, because preaching is where it's at. And so I hang up, and I'm crying, and she goes, "Hi, Yardley." And I said, "Hi, Mom. May I speak to my dad?" And she's like, "Yeah." He goes, "That's what you do. Be ready in an hour." And I was like, and then so he comes back to my house. I live with my mother. He comes back, he picks me up, and he cusses me out from the house all the way to the church. It's like a 25-minute ride. And I'm like, I did it the right way. But the problem is, you never told me what to say. I would have said it, even though this nigga not my mom, though. This nigga's not my mom. My mom's name is Rosemary, and she got 7 kids. She had 9, 2 went on to be with the Lord. I'm sorry, she had 10, 3 went on to be with the Lord, and 7 of us are still here. That's my mom. Bro, that's your wife. If you want me to call your wife mom, then, hey, bro, say that. Now, I can clearly think this out at 11. I don't know why he couldn't clearly think that out at 30, whatever he was. 35, 6, whatever he was at that moment. I didn't understand. To me, I'm like South Park. Why are parents so dumb? Right? And so I'm trying to figure out what I've done. He cussing me out from Dan to Beersheba, one of his sayings. Tells me from Dan all to church. And then y'all fix your face and wipe your face before you go in there and don't embarrass me. Well, the reason why you embarrassed is because of you. And at that moment, I said, I hate this man. I hate him. I hate him. I cannot stand him. But I could not stand not to love him. And from that moment, our relationship changed. Because even before he got married, I would always be with him. And months before he even asked his wife at that time to marry him, I was 9, and he asked me if I was okay with him marrying her. And I was like, that's what you want to do. And so that was my guy. And at that moment, our relationship took a shift. Because I was like, there's something wrong with this dude. And then sometime later, people laugh at me, but this is true. I went to school, and I would go to, when I was in middle school, I went to school by his house. And so I would catch the bus after, I would sometimes stay the night at his house and go to school and then catch the bus home to my mother's house. And so one Sunday, we stayed the weekend with him, me and my 2 brothers, Isaac and Christopher. My younger brothers. We stayed the weekend with him. And then he said, y'all going home? You going home, or you going to stay? Isaac and Chris, they're definitely going home because their school was down the street from my mother's house. And so, Dooney, you going home or are you staying? And I said, I'm going to stay. But I got to being with my brothers and stuff, things like that. And then I went to him and I said, no, we had church that Sunday night. I said, nah, bro, I'm going to go home. This dude commenced to cuss me out again and say, you don't live there no more. You're staying with me. I said, the hell I am. Nah, bro. The hell I am. No, you're staying with me. And da-da-da-da and all this kind of stuff. And he literally took me from my mother. He told my mother I wanted to move in with him. And then he convinced me that my mom wanted me to move in with him. And then when my mom would call, he wouldn't let me talk to her on the phone. Now, this is my dad, who I love to this day, and who, we've talked about these things later on. And my dad kidnapped me in broad daylight. I was young, and so I wouldn't call my mom. Whenever I tried to call, she was like, oh, that, and couldn't use the phone. Then when she would call, they would say I was okay. And I would cry every night. Cry. And his thought process was a son belongs with his father. And he took me from my mom and then left me with his wife because he was never there. When I say never, I mean never. And there were people growing up, and I stayed with my dad until I went to college and went to Morehouse College. Where's the thing? I see y'all can see there. To Morehouse College, Atlanta, Georgia, in 1997. Then I came back home at the end of 2001, and then I moved out 3 months later because them people was crazy at that house. So from 7th grade all the way to high school, I lived through high school. I lived with my father, and he convinced me that I need to be with him, but he left me. He brought me there, and then he left me. His son needs to be with his father, and then he got me there, and then he was off conquering the world, and he left me there. I was supposed to be raised by a man, but he left me to be raised by just a different woman, which was his wife. And I didn't get it, and it made no sense to me whatsoever, because I'm like, bro, why am I here? Why am I here? And yes, I went to college and all. Yes, yeah, great, amazing. But bro, you left me, man. And I know this stuff that I'm speaking of can be tricky for people who knew my father, because I love him with all my heart, and I'm glad he was received by Jesus, and I miss him every single day. But this is really, I have a lot of trauma. Most of my trauma stems from that relationship. Most of my trauma stems from that relationship. Even though it got fixed, and I was able to share so many things with him that I'll share with the world now, and I'll share with whoever wants to listen to me now. But it was the trauma in my life that drove me to do certain things and to act out in certain ways, but much of the trauma came from that father-son relationship that I was taken from my mother to have, but didn't have until I was 36, 34, 35. It didn't really come until later on. And so as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old boy that my father took, convinced my mom I wanted to be with him, and convinced me that my mom wanted me to be with him. And so I really didn't have any real relationship with my mom until I was 19 when I was in college. And she called me on my 19th birthday. And I just told her that I felt that she abandoned me. And then she told me what actually happened. And I was able to talk to my father and confront him about later on down the line, when we had a come to Jesus meeting that was on my terms. But it was so much stuff in between, and so much manipulation going back and forth. And the manipulation was a result of his insecurities and his undoneness. And so instead of saying, son, I want you to come live with me, he stole me in broad daylight. And his wife took me shopping every day and bought me whatever I wanted to help me feel better, because my dad stole me in broad daylight. And this is a tough thing for people who loved him and things like that, but this is my truth. And he wasn't a bad person. He never did harm me in that way. But because of his insecurities and his undoneness and him chasing demons, him chasing the demon of my grandfather. And I like to share these things with the audience here, because I don't want to chase those demons. I don't want to chase the demons of a deceased father. I don't want to chase the demons of trying to be something that someone who's not here wanted me to be. He used to hate when I used to cut my hair off, but I was going bald. Early male pattern baldness, and a preacher don't shave their head. Well, it's just because you don't mind me having spots in my head because it makes you feel good, doesn't make me feel good. There's so much control, and even when we separated and I had to go my way after my daughter was born, I had to go my way because I woke up one day and I realized that I can't raise her under this control. So I had to separate from everyone he knew and everyone he was about, and his church and the church that I now pastor. I had to separate myself from, because he was such a strong influence and such a strong person, such a dominating figure. I mean, people came to church to preach and preach about me because I was gone. And I'm trying to figure out, who the hell am I? You know what I mean? Who the hell am I? Like, what makes me that important? And he had people from other parts of the country calling me, and I done cussed out pastors and prophets. Because my thought process was, if you was a real prophet, then you know the real truth. You know I'm not the problem. Because for once in my life, I was right. I wasn't the problem. I had to disconnect from the problem and stand on my own. Like I was able to tell him some years later, hey, Dad, I will never ask your fatherly advice because you're a horrible father. You're a great provider, but a horrible father. You can't father nothing as far as I'm concerned. You did a piss poor job with your children. You did a great job with everyone who was not your children, who was not your authentic biological child. But at the end of your life, who was there? At the end of it all, who was there? Who paid for it? Who was there? Who was there? Not all the people who you fathered and loved and all this kind of stuff. Your kids who you rejected. We were the ones who were there. This is not an indictment on him. This is just my truth. And again, because I love my dad. So many great things about him. You watch me preach, or even how I'm speaking right now. That's him. He was my biggest push, but also my biggest hindrance. He had this knack for tearing you to build you. He had a knack for talking down to you, to other people, or so he could still be in full control. He had a knack for saying how amazing you are to other people, but not telling you. He had a knack for taking credit for your good stuff and rejecting everything that's not great. That's one of the reasons why I can't stand when people tell me your dad would be so proud of you. No, I hate that. Why? Because most of the things I do personally, he wouldn't, because he wasn't. He was only proud after work because he was convinced that most of my ideas didn't work. When he realized I was a pretty decent preacher, he swore up and down it wasn't me, that I was stealing stuff from somebody else. Until he sat down and talked to me. Till I was in my 30s and he actually talked to me. Then he realized, wait a minute, his brain works too. So I don't like when people tell me, or I do a post on Facebook and they're like, your dad would sure be proud of you. No, he wouldn't, because he wouldn't. He wouldn't. It was only proud if it was his way. So stop telling me that. That doesn't make me feel good. I know what legacy is, but sometimes I don't like it. I don't like it because it's torturous. Because it still feels like that I'm living somebody else's stuff. It feels like it, that as soon as I do something, somebody else gets all the credit for it. And I'm like, call me selfish, but when can I stand on my own 2 feet and nobody steal me just because I have a chosen vocation? That was just like his. A chosen and a called vocation. A chosen vocation and then a call that's connected to the vocation. And so I got a lot of daddy issues. You hear me refer to them a lot in this and that. I got so many things. So many things. I remember when I finally just started standing my ground with him. Finally started standing my ground with him. We couldn't believe it. And people would say things like, you guys don't know what you have in the Father. And I was like, that nigga crazy. Nigga, I know what I got in the Father. You don't know what I have in the Father. You don't know what I have. I remember someone told my oldest sister, Vanessa, who was a daughter. That's why I have a tough time with spiritual parents. I really have a tough time with it. It's a trigger for me. It's traumatic for me. Who was a daughter of my dad and his wife, his former wife. You don't know what you have, and if that was my dad or my mom, I'd sit at their feet. First of all, it's not my mom. Can we just put that together? Then secondly, no. Why would I sit at somebody's feet who doesn't even like me? They like y'all more than they like us. What is wrong with you people? What? And people always talk about the preacher's kids and things like that, how bad they are and things like that. But you don't realize the trauma that some of us have gone through, not because our parents want to hate us, but because of their own insecurities. Many of them, because especially those who operate in ministry, many of them, not today, but many of them, especially, my friends and my counterparts, our parents who operate in ministry, they get stuck because they've never done anything else. So all they know how to do is be spiritual. They don't know how to do anything else. And so they're like athletes who, like Michael Jordan, he retired, he kept coming back because he didn't have anything else to do. He didn't know anything else. That's all he ever did. And so it's the traumatic experiences, not just because preachers' kids are bad and not because they forget about us, but the trauma of having to be something, the trauma of sitting a front row lifestyle, but knowing that home is back row. The trauma of knowing the people. And I'm different purposely, and I work hard to be different. The trauma of knowing the hurt that he was going through. But then he'd get up there and preach like everything was good. And teach like everything was good. And shout like everything was good. When everything was falling apart to pieces. And you sitting there and singing praise and worship and all this kind of stuff. The moment of when your child messes up because you're so dogmatic, you got to put your child on Front Street about what they do and tell everybody and preach about it. because you're so dogmatic and you're so hard, and having to live through the fact that their members were their friends, and they would or I won't talk about that. the trauma of being a PK that has nothing to do with the people. You know what I'm saying? People hate PKs and da da da. Let's get off the people and hating the PKs, and let's get on the PKs at the house. Or the mom and the dad wearing Versace and Armani Black Label, and the mom wearing St. John and Gucci and Louis Vuitton, and wearing the best perfume, but you don't even get lunch money because ain't enough money to give lunch money, but you're off flying to New York to go shopping, and going to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, to go shopping, getting hand painted ties and suits made cut just for you, and I sent you to school with a $2,000 suit. So what? When's the last time you talked to me? But I saw you talk to them, but when you talk to me, but when I want to come talk to you, then you can't talk to me, but you'll sit there and cry on the floor with other people. The trauma of being told that you can't have friends, you can't have friends. All girls got to be like your sister. And then you don't have no girls around because you don't know how to talk to them, but you like them, but you can't talk to them because you get mucked at the mouth. What's wrong with you? Or told if you don't got church friends, if you got friends who are unsaved, it's because you live in unsaved. All to realize that, wait a minute, none of y'all friends are saved, and y'all not saved at all. Y'all live a whole life, and that's not pleasing to God at all. The traumatic experience of being taught and trying to live by the fact of nothing controls you as a man. You're a man. You control your world. You control everything around you. You control your peace. And you work hard to be that person. You work hard to be that man. You work hard to be that preacher. You work hard to be that guy. All to wake up and realize that you're the only one trying to be that. Everybody else drinks. Everybody else is smoking something. Everybody else is snorting something. All the preachers are smoking something. All the singers are snoring something. Everybody's sleeping with somebody. Everybody talking to somebody. And you're the only one trying to do it the right way. I should listen to my brother Christopher. Only one. And you wake up and realize they're bashing you for your choice of woman who just supports you. But they're having wild parties. You people shouldn't, you can't be that close to your people, but you drink with your people. They all at your house, all in your space, living with you. These are things that preachers' kids live through, and those who have daddy issues, especially those who have leaders and people in high places, per se. And I can just imagine, because my dad was Sacramento, California, full gospel famous. He wasn't even famous. I got daddy issues. And I know it's some people are going to hear this, not going to like it, who know him, but there's somebody out there who's like, man, I got some too, man. My dad ain't nobody. I got hella daddy issues. I got daddy issues, I do. And I fight the demons every single day, and I work hard not to expose my children to those things and to be different. And sometimes I over dad in certain areas, and the other areas I under dad because I don't want to reproduce the same stuff. And so sometimes I let my girls do things that I could never do. And then sometimes I have a tough time not letting them do certain things, or pushing them from certain things, or being too hard. Because I work so hard not to reproduce it. I remember my father telling me years later, he's like, son, I don't know how you became such a good dad. I was like, dude, bro, me neither, bro. He's like, I admire you as a father, and that meant a lot to me. Because I was able to tell him that I would never ask him for fatherly advice. Not that I ask him for relationship advice either. Nah. Not too good at those things. You gotta know your strong suit. You gotta know where you're strong at. You gotta know your strength. You gotta know where you're good at. And you gotta be honest about that. And you're not disrespecting those who came before you or those who are with you by saying, nah, you're not the person for that. You're for this. Like I said, but by the time my father went to be with Jesus, we were thick as thieves, and there was nothing between us. Matter of fact, our last conversation was amazing. We was actually fighting. Well, he was fighting. I was listening. I told him it was February 12th, 2019. We got into it because I couldn't make the Bible study, and he went and made a mess of everything I had created. And he got mad because the people at the church, they sided with me and told me we're going to wait till pastor comes before we do what you say. Because you say he's the pastor, right? And so we got into it. And so I just told him, I said, listen, man, if you don't want me to do it, then I'm going to take my ball. I'm going to go home. And I'm going to let you pastor your church. So you got to be the bishop. I'm going to let you do it. I'm going to let you have it. He cussed me out again. And I said, hey, you cussing yourself out because this is not affecting me. I don't need your stuff. If it's yours, it's yours. It's supposed to be the Lord's, and you said that God told you to let me be the pastor and to do the work, and let me, if you're going to let me do the work, let me do the work. And so I said, I'm going to take my ball and go home, and I'm going to see you on the flip side. Then he called back crying. These words he said, I'm sorry, and he said, you are the pastor. You are my pastor. You're the pastor of the church. And I'm taking a step back. I know I've said that before, but I'm going to step back because you're the pastor, and I can't lose your pastor because God told me that you're the pastor of that church. I'm not the pastor anymore. You are. And I'm sorry, and I don't want anything to come between us. And I said, Dad, don't worry about it. I'm not going to let anything come between you and I. You're my guy. You're my dad. You're my best friend. You're the friend I always wanted that I finally got to have. Why would I let people or things or isms or schisms come between that? I'm gonna always ask you things. I'm not always going to do it your way or what you want me to do, but I'm going to always seek your advice and seek your counsel. You're my dad, man. What? You're my guy. I call you for stupid stuff. You know the worst parts about me. I don't just confide in you, but I just tell you when I'm tearing up. You don't confide in me. You just tell me when you're tearing up. Because sometimes you talk to me as your friend. Other times you talk to me as your son. Other times you say, I need my pastor. I need my pastor to pray for me. I need my pastor to counsel me. That was our relationship the last 5 or so years of his life. And I had this conversation. I said, Dad, I'm not going to let nothing come between us. And I got you. You got me. We do this thing together. And he said, but you're the pastor. I said, okay. We hung up. He called right back. We talked about something stupid. We hung up again. He texted me that night. I still have the message. Text me. It's on my other phone. That don't work no more, but I can still see it. And it's the last conversation we had because on the 15th, we didn't talk on the 13th or the 14th. 14th is Valentine's Day. 15th, he lost all ability, and that was it. But last thing he told me was confirming that I was the pastor, and that was my guy. That was my dude. He is my guy. But my guy was the best, worst person on planet Earth for me. And I'll let my siblings, have their own life and their own stories. But we've talked, and we continue to talk, and we continue to share, and we continue to be open and have table talks and go to the red table, as it were, to talk about things and be honest. And we discover things that we didn't know were real are real, things that we thought were fake, they're really real, and hurts that we didn't know that we really had, we have them. Pain that we didn't know that we have them. Tears and where they came from. For instance, my sister used to call me John, from John F. Kennedy's son. Basically saying I got stuff that nobody else got. And I was able to tell them on my 43rd birthday, I'm 43 now, I'll be 44 in a couple months. I was able to tell them on my 43rd birthday, wait a minute. Y'all hurt me saying that because you guys made me feel like I just tried to make it seem like I just got stuff. I busted my ass. Y'all forgive me. I know a pastor. I busted my ass every chance I got to achieve. And so when people come and see me and they give me love and they give me appreciation, it's because I was busting my butt. I was the one who didn't go to prom. I was the one who didn't go to my senior ball. Working at the church, directing the choir, leading praise and worship, traveling up and down the state, building our state full gospel music ministry. When we had a state choir of like 200 people, that was me. I was the one when nobody would preach and my dad would ask who's preaching. Nobody would say nothing. And I would say I preach. You know, I didn't have a sermon to preach. I hadn't read my Bible in a week, but I'd say I preach. And the other preachers would get mad at me and then make it seem like that I was getting special treatment because they were afraid to preach. I think I'm the only preacher out of the whole group, out of the whole 20 or something, 30 of us left. I know there's one more. And one of the guys is a pastor. But all of us who would be in that back room on Sundays and he would say, I'm not preaching, who's preaching? I would say, I will. He got mad at me and thinks I was getting special treatment. Or one who said because they sent me to Morehouse that I was going to be jacked up. What the heck? Morehouse. Which are? Maroon Tigers. Right? And so I just, and I told him, I said, you guys act like that. All this singing, rehearsing and stuff I was doing. I was busting my butt. Nothing was handed to me. 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 Nothing was gift wrapped. Everything I worked for. I was the one homeless working for the church, living in my car until my sister let me come and stay with her. And my dad knew I had nowhere to go. I was the one, because the church wouldn't pay me, because they decided to pay everybody else out, but wouldn't pay me. I was the one homeless, living in my car, working for the church, working hard for the church. So, I got issues. I got daddy issues. I got issues. I got mom issues too. I got all kind of issues. But I got God too. And I'm happy. Got a good wife, good kids. Got a good church. We're about to move into a new, larger space that we have to knock walls out. I got a good life. But I still got issues. And you can be good and still have issues. I'm good, but I have issues. But my issues don't overwhelm and overcome me. So, that's all. I gotta go.